in the lane, moving fast, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss,
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight. And I say that before every single show. And here's what I mean by that, guys. I only speak with transportation professionals because at the end of the day, you guys, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I got a very special guest. I'm going to bring him up here very shortly. Quick reminder, though, you guys, the weekly newsletter dropped this morning. Go to thefreightcoach.com. It will auto prompt you to register for it. Again, it's all industry insight, fuel prices, rates, stuff like that. We talk about it. But again, I don't sell out my listeners or my contacts and just auto sign you guys up. So if you want to check that out, freightcoach.com, and we'll go from there. But with that being said, you guys, again, entrepreneurship is a phenomenal journey. It's definitely over-glorified on the internet and everything else that you see out there about how easy it is, how great it is. It is all of that, but there's a cost behind a lot of that. And I'm gonna bring up my guy here right now, and we're gonna talk about his journey in the industry. So I got my man Matt with Monarch Connect on the show today. Matt, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited. I had to match your flag with my flags here in the background. I get some of that patriotism across all countries here.
Dude, I love it. And, with current events, I'm going to have to slap a tariff on you now with that. So we might as well.
It's going to go both ways here. It's going to go both ways. As long as we're smiling and we're doing it, we're good.
Oh, dude, I love it. That's funny. So, Matt, dude, how'd you get your start in freight, man? What brought you into this industry?
I think nobody, at least in North America, comes into freight just by choice. Everybody kind of falls into it through one way or another. My journey was a little bit unique. I started off joining logistics through a family friend. They got me involved in a company called Fluor. I went overseas to work with a company called Fluor, which I did work on. It's called LogCap 4, which is a military operation by the American military. I was in Afghanistan helping the troops, both Canadian and American, but I was mainly on American bases. Fell in love with logistics there. When I came back, I go, hey, I got to keep doing it. So that kind of started my journey. Then from there, I went into trucking, worked for Bison, then went into logistics, worked for companies like Fuel Transport, which is a logistics company here in Canada. And then I worked for Traffics, and then worked for Amplify Logistics. And then I found a great co-founder, and we started Monarch Connect, and we wanted to do something a little bit different. And that's where the entrepreneurship kind of got me to where I am today.
So I love what you said about you guys wanted to do something different. And I think like that's a statement that you hear a lot of people throw out there. But when you say that, Matt, what does that mean to you? What is that? Is like on your guys' vision or like your core values? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, the business partner, Kat, she's the vision board person. So she has the vision board and says like, hey, this we got to manifest all this stuff. But our motto is we got to deliver with kindness. We find a lot of everybody out there today just rams everything down the freight, the driver's throats, rams it down the shipper. This is what we can do. Nobody really tries to solve the problem like you. So there's none of that coaching involved in it. There's none of that partnership involved with it. Everybody's like, hey, you got a truck? Let's move it. Let's do it. Like, okay, how do we get to this point? What's the challenges that you guys are facing? Like, we want to really get to the bulk of what is logistics. And I find that occurred when a lot of these tech companies started coming into logistics and saying, oh, this is an easy fix. Let's just match a truck and a customer and put them together and just move that freight. And I don't think that's what we do. And from the sounds of it, I don't think, Chris, that's what you do either. So I think most of us don't want to do that, but there's a lot of, and we've talked about it when we first set up, there's a lot of those basement brokers that kind of did that for a while during COVID and ruined that reputation for everybody.
Yeah, I think that, this, and when I sit out here and I say like it's different now, from like a business development standpoint and everything else. I mean, that's kind of like a great way to summarize what you were saying there is that's kind of what I feel like we're up against, right? Because it's like, this is a massive opportunity, but this is also a massive hurdle for a lot of business development reps out there right now there has been yes, it's been very easy to cover trucks here over these last couple of years, but there's been some colossal stupidity that's been ran through, a lot of what's going on out there. And you're really only as good as their last experience with the service that you are offering, right? And that's across the board, man. I don't care if you're selling fucking ink for a printer. It's the exact same thing. And, for us inside of our organization, my business partner and I, our number one core value is do the right thing. And that is a very subjective and open statement. But I say that because deep down inside, we all know what's right and what's wrong. We all know the difference. Unless you were raised in the wild, you were raised in an environment where you know the difference between right and wrong. And I think, and even if you had a shitty upbringing, instinctively, we all know if we should or shouldn't be doing something. And I have just found that throughout my business, again, I'm not an entrepreneur guru or a genius or anything like that. I'm just a guy who's been in it here for, about 5 years now. And I know that in most situations, when I have put my best foot forward and I have been as open and honest about everything, and I have kept the other party's interest in mind, my customer, my carriers, all of that, as long as I kept that mentality, things have ultimately worked out in the long run. And I think that that's, one thing that, individuals need to really take into consideration as you're going out there and trying to develop business, right? Like, dude, I've already made, and I say this before every show, it's like, I've already made my 35 cold calls, before I jump on. I break it up. I do 35 before the show and I'll finish up and do 15 after the show. But I do that. And, I'm out there talking to people all day long. And no matter what, I know that there's a high probability that most of these individuals will not remember me in about 30 seconds. But as long as I hold myself to that same standard, I'm respectful, even if it's a rejection. Hey, I completely understand. Thank you so much for your time, and end the call. I don't push. I don't do any of that because I just don't believe in that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And luckily, I am not the cold call guru in our group. I'm more of the operations, kind of, talking to the truckers and talking to the drivers in operations. Kat, my business partner, she really doesn't. She does the same experience. She says the same thing. It's like, hey, we make all these phone calls, and you don't know if it's going to register, but the ones that do, we create meaningful relationships with them and make it long lasting. And we high five and we're excited every time we get a customer because we know we're solving a problem. But the same thing for me when I'm talking to a lot of the truckers in the operations. I don't want to just hire a truck for the lowest price because I want to make sure they can grow and come back next year. But if I can keep a truck and then he multiplies to 2 trucks next year, 4 trucks the year after that, 16 trucks the year after that, that's going to benefit me because I helped him get him started. A lot of the other brokers in the industry don't understand that aspect of it, where it's like, oh man, I made $5,000 off of this guy. He didn't know the market. To me, that's just not, like you're talking about, being dishonest, right? Like if I have had guys lowball me and I've rejected it, be like, you don't know the market, or there's something else going on that shouldn't be that low today. And it's either, hey, let me help you, educate you what's happening in the market, or B, what's going on in your operation. Tell me why you're so cheap into that area. If you can't articulate that properly, you really got to work on that in your business because you might not be around tomorrow. And I need every guy that I use to be there because being a repetitive customer for me is just as important because they will know my customers' freight better. And then they will execute on a higher level. And when there's issues, there's less phone calls at 2 a.m. One thing I hate, Chris, is a 2 o'clock phone call with a guy doesn't know what to do. And he's like, oh, what am I supposed to do in this circumstances? But versus someone who's trained, be like, hey, Matt, I'm sorry I'm calling you this late. I've already done all these 13 steps. This is where we're at. Let me know what I should do now. And then we know we can keep, roll on to the next thing. And I'd rather pay $100, $200, $300 more for a carrier to do that than having those all night phone calls and upsetting the customer, the shipper, everybody in between by not knowing what to do next.
Yeah, that, again, you guys, if you're listening to this on the replay later on in the day, rewind everything Matt just said and re-listen to that till it truly resonates with you, because what you're describing right there is something that, we're not perfect, but we try and apply that on every single shipment, right? Because like at the end of the day, man, I don't want to go out to the spot market to find opportunities or to find the next. I want to find, like, again, we had a couple of loads that moved this week already. Booked them with the exact same trucking company. They were phenomenal, right? Like I literally told the dispatcher, I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for like 15 years now. I just want to let you guys know, you guys are in the upper echelon of providers that I've worked with.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we found out, all right, how many trucks they have in their fleet. We know exactly what lanes that they like to run now, which kind of fits inside of a core region of ours, which is, the Virginia down to Florida in the Southeast, like mid-Atlantic down to the Southeast there. And, again, like now I know as we're out there and selling, like it's just that confidence as a broker when I'm going out there and prospecting new opportunities where I'm going to talk to them about that, right? Because I'm very singular focused in our business development approach when it boils down to it, because I have just found that is working in with my prospects right now is very singular, very direct. This is what we do. This is who we are, as opposed to the old spray and pray methodology.
Exactly.
That used to work back in 2010 to 2020, right? But things have seismically shifted in that. But now I know, because I know that this will resonate with some sales reps out there. The nerve that you feel after you onboard that new customer and they send you your first load and you're like, fuck, we don't have a real carrier for this. That all goes away when you have that capacity network built up where it's like, dude, I have 1,000% confidence that when I land my next shipper that moves freight from that region that I just mentioned, and I can call that carrier up, I know how it's going to go.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I have on my wall. You can't see it, but it says, do not take same day loads for that very specific reason. Because as an ops guy or a founder, I want to take as much freight as possible. So I have to constantly remind myself, if an opportunity is knocking and a customer's pressuring you, you want to say yes. Mm-hmm. But unless you have a truck in hand with someone that that is trusted, that can execute to the level that you want, you don't want to bring your operations level down to a lower level. That's where things like a proper TMS really comes into place. And luckily enough, and funny enough, I didn't even notice this, Revenova is who we use for our TMS. Along the bottom there somewhere. It really does help us get to where we need to get. For me, it's awesome because I can use it off my phone. And a lot of those other legacy softwares I've used in the past, I need to be mobile as a founder because I might be out visiting a customer. I don't have time to bring up my laptop or whatnot. So having the ability for that to be an all-in-one package part of your TMS really helped us in our initial first year growth. And it helps with our customers' visibility because it was able to provide all the things that a customer would normally ask for. It's already there. And that really helps when you're starting off with a company as well. And that's one part of our journey that we wanted to really focus on, is finding create a great TMS software that can do all those things for us and then add layers to it as we grow.
Yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, right? Like I also am a active Revenova user as well, right? Like we use them every single day. I was literally in there this morning researching prospects, researching active shipments that we have and all of that. And, and that's one thing for me where it's like, having that ability to really grow and scale. And because dude, we have to run lean at the end of the day. We are a startup. We are bootstrapped. We have to get, as the old rap song goes, I got to make $1 out of 15 cents. Like that is my life right now. Right. So it's like to have the right tech in our operation that helps us scale and just save. Because to me, man, I'm constantly looking at it from an efficiency standpoint. How do I save minutes of my day so I can take those saved minutes and pick up the phone and start making more sales calls, right? Like that's my focus is. And that's where it's like the operations of having the right tech stack inside of your organization it is. I think it's a massive difference maker out there. Like one of my literal favorite features in Revenova is the clone feature that comes along with it. Like cloning shipments and everything, because dude, we don't have EDI customers. We don't have a lot of that stuff out there. So it's like we have customers who, we pick up out of a lot of the exact same and deliver into the same facilities. Man, you know how much time that saves us just to go in and click that, duplicates everything because the commodity's the same, the weight's the same, pickup delivery locations the same, all of that, dude. It's just like that just saves us a ton of time.
Automatic posting, the carrier can go in and put in all their information, can start their tracking. We use Trucker Tools, but connects to your Trucker Tools, automatically sets up the geolocation for everything. Geo fences the whole bit. Customer gets their notification. Drivers are like it. Literally, the tracing. I don't need to like a lot of. This might be a hot take. A lot of people think, we got to nearshore everything to other countries, and I think that's the wrong approach. I think having the technology for you to be able to focus on what you're doing really will push it more forward for you, because then you can go have more in-depth conversations with your carriers, with your customers, because you have the ability to know everything's being handled in the background correctly, and not always relying on third-party outside sources is the best way of going about it. I love to keep everything as much as close to heart as possible, and then be able to talk to my carriers as often as possible. I find that fundamentally very important too. That's why another feature I like it in Revenova is being able to track all those rates that you're putting in, and being able to go back and review that later on with your guys. Like, hey, I know you're one of my most common carriers, but you're like X amount above the market today. Like, what's going on? And be able to have those conversations. I think a lot of people just put a rate in and they move on. They don't go back to have conversations with your steady guys. Be like, hey, this is how we need to improve. This is what we need to do to be able to secure more business. Is part of that ideology as well for us.
So how are you leveraging that to kind of stay lean, right? Because like this is another thing too, out in the real world where I operate, not everybody just has boatloads of investment capital to go hire fucking 100 people, right? Like we gotta make this work. So how are you leveraging that data to help you make better decisions inside of your business? Because that's one thing that we do too, man. Like we are very, and when I say we, this is 100% my business partner. He is the guy who fucking tracks all the data. I talk all the shit. He takes all the shit I talk and then compiles it up into a very nice report for us to look at. But with that being said though, man, like our data is everything right now because it is, man. Like I love going, like, again, we're not in a position to turn away business, but at the end of the day, not all revenue is profitable. Okay.
Exactly.
Not all customer is profitable. So it's like, how are you doing that? And then like leveraging that to know like, hey, we're good with our current employee headcount, for example. We don't need, if we focus more on booking these same repeatable carriers, we don't necessarily need to invest in hiring anybody at this time. We can keep stashing away capital to make sure that when we do bring somebody on, we have a financial runway already built in.
And I think, Chris, that's a very hard decision to always be making every single day as an entrepreneur. That's one of the things that I've been learning and I wasn't accustomed to is when do you hire on? And I laugh because remember when I was an employee, I'd always be telling my boss, we need to hire more people. We need to hire more people. Why can't we just hire more people to help support? Now, as a business owner, we're like, how much more can I do before I blow my brains out, right? And it's hard because you really want to focus on the right trucks and having the right ability to have the right knowledge to service the customers. And I think you nailed it earlier. It's understanding your carriers and where they're running and what capacity they can give you, and then making them feel comfortable that you will secure that capacity. Because how many guys that that you talk to have been offered an RFQ from one of the big retailers because the broker got it. When they got the RFQ, they never saw the freight. And there's that, the trust is lacking. When you have that trust built and the data that you get, is accurate. So what I mean by that is often when we go talk to our carriers, and when I used to do this, when I used to talk to carriers, I used to add another 20, 30% or I know they're 20, 30% higher because they're fishing. I used to just say they're fishing for rates and they're not giving you an accurate number that's out there. We'd have to really kind of guesstimate where it is. So you'd have to rely on different kind of reports and whatnot. Now, when you're working with trusted people and you have, like for me, Revenova, I have that sales tracking data that comes in, what other people are using, what kind of other rates. Very similar to what Greenscreen even does too. You're able to go, hey, this is the market. This is what my guy's telling me. I know we're pretty close. I think I can secure the business at this. Go back to my carrier, be like, this is what I'm seeing as the market. Can you agree to this rate for 6 to 12 months? Lock it in. If I get this business, put it into writing it into a contract. And then everybody's kind of happy and hopefully you're able to kind of grow from that position. I try to stay away from the load boards, but you need to develop carriers. And those are very much needed still too. So load boards are good for new blood trying to find it out. But I'm different in a way. I talk to all my broker friends and I'll ask them who they're using and who is good and who is bad and be like, hey, what's your guys' experience with this? I'm willing to try. Or I'll tell them, hey, these guys are really great. Please use them. Because I think that helps the whole community out as well. When like-minded brokers use like-minded carriers, that group's going to rise to the top versus people who kind of hoard all the information to themselves and it doesn't benefit the community. And I'm very much a community believer. And one of my mottos always was, there's enough freight for everybody to go around. There's always a driver shortage. We always hear about there's not enough freight. I know there's dips in the market, but I don't know about you, but we felt a little bit of a crunch in the last couple of weeks with the tariffs. Now it's probably going to be the reverse. Not enough drivers. This is happening. That is happening. You always got to be working within your community. And I think that community presence is very important to be able to really accurately understand your data that you're getting.
Are you guys primarily doing cross-border freight then? Is that your guys' kind of your wheelhouse, or are you guys intra-Canada for the most part?
Majority is cross-border, and we focus on cold chain. We love dealing with anything that has to do with cold chain, predominantly with food, food mainly. And the reason being is recession-proof in our mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely, 100% agree with that stance, right? Like food at the end of the day, like if we're not eating, like I think we can all do the math on a lot of that stuff. But you know, from my perspective though, Matt, how have your prospects, again, you do a ton of cross-border freight. I know tariffs are all over the news about what's going to happen. Is it going to happen? Is it a giant negotiation? My personal stance is I'm at a wait and see with a lot of this because I feel like a lot of the talk goes away when there's a little bit, there's a give and a take, right? I don't think anybody can deny that the United States practically subsidizes the majority of the world. And I look at it as this: we're like 35, $36 trillion in debt. We got to start clawing our way out, right? But with that being said, though, man, when we're at the front lines like we are in transportation, how much of that is a concern with a lot of your customers right now? Are you seeing that they're like, hey, we got to get a bunch of this stuff shipped down there right now? Are they at a wait and see? How is that looking?
A lot of the food guys are very much, I wouldn't call it panicking, but they're being very, very urgent in their requests and the movement of the goods, because they don't know what's happening. So a lot of the protein buyers are really shipping across the border and they're really buying to bring up inventory into Canada, because Canada and the United States have been best friends for a heck of a long time, right? So
Yeah.
we've been across border sharing everything, resources. Our regions are more aligned than certain parts of the US within itself. So the Midwest and the prairies are more similar than Ontario and New York are to even the BC and the California area. So these regions have developed more regionally versus countrywise. So and the supply chains feed it that way. That's why you saw Trump talk about the pipeline recently, because it connects from Alberta all the way down. But to the same effect, a lot of these food buyers right now are pushing a lot of their products across because everybody wants to build up inventory. The problem with a lot of these positions is it's perishables. You can't increase too much of that inventory, because then you have to really sell it quickly at a lower price once it starts spoiling. So it's kind of like a catch-22. So certain products are moving and getting frozen and being held to, but other products you can't do that. But the customers are then deciding, do we buy across from Canada? Do we buy from Mexico? If we can't buy from those two, do we really want to buy from China? Do we want to really buy from South Africa? Or do we really want to buy from Asian countries? Or do we just continue buying from Canada and Mexico because it's still a better product, because they adhere to the same rules that we do when it comes to food consumption? And I think that's part of what has to be kind of hashed out in the next little bit. But everybody has to obviously protect their own interests for the most part. But I think there's a lot of panic buying going to start happening if tariffs do come into play, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Robert Cowton has a question about what technology are you using to onboard carriers right now?
I use RMIS. I know Highway is the other one that was kind of popular. I've always used RMIS. It was more like a familiarity for me, and it's kind of worked out. And I like how it kind of, for me, it goes right into my Revenova system. I don't have to kind of do anything else. I do use Carrier for a one-on-one to kind of have a look at what the carriers are being rated on and how they're being looked at. But for the most part, I want to make sure the insurances are up to date. I have my thresholds for the most part get always triggered because of differences between Canada and the United States. I always review all my carriers at least 3 times before I onboard them. That's very important to what we do.
Yeah, no, I got you there, man. I think that, with where things are right now, how are you projecting, in maybe you and your business partner, how are you guys projecting what 2025 might shake out to be? My personal stance is, I mean, outside of some drastic event that happens, and again, you could argue that implementation of tariffs at the levels that are being spoken about, that could cause a drastic shift. If all of this kind of gets worked out, which I ultimately think a lot of it is just media sounding pieces, it's going to work itself out. I don't necessarily see anything changing for the most part. I feel like what we're experiencing right now is probably going to trickle along throughout the year. What's your kind of thoughts on that?
We're projecting a very good year. I think freight's going to increase for us just because we're still very much in growth stage or initial kind of stages. So it's a lot easier to go from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, and so on. But I feel there's going to be a lot more freight for entrepreneurs like ourselves right now, as other companies are going to try something different because they weren't being provided the support they were promised. And I think it's a very much a year for entrepreneurship, as both sides of the border are going to be focused on that middle class again, which is great for startup companies, getting in there and kind of really focusing on what customers need. And I'll also see the rise of these smaller companies. So there's a famous company in Canada that's kind of really taking on Hershey's and Nestle. It's called Midday Squares, and there's a lot of these like smaller chocolate companies or other food confectionery companies that are coming up through the ranks, and they're going to be coming big in 2025, 2026, 2027. Only people like you and I are able to service because they don't want to go over to the big guys because they're not going to get that specific need that they're looking for.
Yeah.
So I really see 2025 being a very good year for entrepreneurs and mid to smaller size enterprises for sure.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Matt, in that regard. I personally think, and like I had Sean Smith, he's with Denim. We do a Financial Friday show once a month together, and we were talking about that. I think it was either in December or January, where the growth in the industry or like the market actually started showing a shift in smaller providers taking market share away from the larger providers out there. And I'm like, dude, I'm of the mindset, no matter what I say about the market, you guys, I personally don't give a flying fuck how the market is performing. I will find a way to win, right? Like that is where I'm at with it. And I'm right there with you, man. Like I think that the tolerance for failure is the longer, like I will say this to any sales rep out there, the longer that this market remains this way, the better of an opportunity you're going to have when their current network fails, because the tolerance for failure will be so low because most people are going to look back. Most people's attention span is like 8 seconds, you guys. All right. So like, they're going to look back and be like, well, hey, it's been easy for like our trucks have been on time for the last year. What gives now? Are you not able to do this job? We got to find somebody who is. So I think like these next 12 to 24 months are going to turn into one of the biggest market share grabs of modern history. I truly feel that way about that from a business development standpoint in freight.
I would add a caveat to that. As long as you have a product to sell and you're not just selling, I can pick up and deliver. If you're just doing a pickup and delivery and you're commoditized that way, all the other sales rep are having the same conversation. And you really need to have an ability to speak to what you're doing and what you're doing differently and able to vocalize that to the customer. Because if you're making that phone call and you're going, hey, I pick up on time. My on-time percentage is 99%. He's going to say, yeah, so is the other 150 phone calls I got today. Like, how is that different? And difference could be in the things that how you promote yourself and being a familiar face, going out there and exposing yourself into being a part of the community, going out there and doing different things differently. And what I mean by that is focusing on a specific niche. Like if you're doing dry freight that is full truckload, point A to point B, you're going to be losing out to the big guys like Prime and Schneider all day long because they can get it down to the pennies and they need to make $1 off of every truck that they move. You need to make a heck of a lot more. So you really got to focus on what your story is in that journey that you're providing to your customer and how you fit part of their journey. And that's why I said like the way we're buying now is changing as well. So everybody's going on TikTok, everybody's going on Instagram. Nobody's going and watching the commercials about TV dinners anymore. It's like who you're following, that's influencing what you're buying. And those purchases are different from what it was 20, 30 years ago. They're not going to giant warehouses anymore. You got to be far more niche. You got to have more of that supply chain kind of figured out versus I pick up with a big truck, I deliver with a big truck. That's all I can offer. How else can you give them a different opportunities? Can you cross-stock this? Can you warehouse it for them? Can you provide a final mile? Can you palletize? Can you pick and pack? What kind of folder solution can you do that makes them more attractive to you is what I would suggest for 2025.
I love it. Matt, dude, this flew by. I knew it was going to. I mean, the first time we talked, I think we almost went for like an hour and we're both like, fuck, we got to get back to work here.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I appreciate you joining today. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more? If you guys are hiring, whatever it is, man, put that out there so people know how to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Either through our website, Monarch Connect, obviously monarchconnect.com, shoot us an email. There's obviously a contact list there on LinkedIn. We're going to be expanding some of our socials. We're doing a few different things later on this year. So check that stuff out. We'll have a lot more announcements that we'll have coming up. I think it'll be pretty cool. And yeah, just kind of reach out to us. We're very responsive. We're not like, I think most people where they just kind of ignore everybody. We'd like to get in touch with everybody that we can chat with, whether it's you have industry knowledge, if you want to learn about something, we just want to talk to everybody and learn about you as well.
I appreciate it, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me. That's going to be it for today, you guys. We got a guest coming on pretty much tomorrow. Well, not pretty much, tomorrow and Friday as well. As always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Or if you're feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be, rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, you guys, because that's what helps us get that message out there, is because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.